Attention sports teams. Let us introduce you to the best fan engagement tool in the game, .vote. By getting a .vote web address for your team, you can allow fans to engage and interact with big-time decisions. In a single click, not only can fans make their opinions heard, but sports teams get a better understanding of their fans' interests. Keep your fans engaged. Simply visit GoDaddy.com today, type in the desired name of your web address, and let the voting begin.
Not all baseball slumps are the same. Yes, the Yankees and Mets have been terrible, but one is in far better shape than the other. I'll tell you who. Plus, we're joined by the great Michael Kay on this episode of Gordon Damer on Sports. Okay, welcome in. Thanks for joining me once again on a fresh episode of Gordon Damer on Sports, episode number 32. Lots to discuss, plenty to get into. But of course, before we do, please hit that subscribe button wherever you are listening, whatever platform you're listening on. If it's Apple, if it's Spotify, if it's YouTube, like the episode, rate the episode, share it with a friend. It really does make a huge difference in growing the podcast. All right. So today's episode, we got a lot of stuff to get into, and we will be joined by the great Michael Kay to try to get some answers on what the heck is going on with the New York Yankees. But of course, with the Yankees having a disastrous weekend, the Mets having a disastrous weekend, it was almost like the Mets were trying to take the pressure off the Yankees by doing their best to be even worse. Anything you can't do, I'm even worse at. I mean, the Mets invented ways to lose games this weekend against the Brewers. Guys getting thrown out of the plate, pitch clock violations, 2-run home run, walk-off home runs. Absolutely brutal. 7 straight losses. I think it's 11 out of 12. So what's going on? Is it fixable for either team, and which team is right now in bigger trouble? So by now, you've probably seen the stats that since June 13th, Yankees and Mets are the worst teams in baseball. If you're a Yankee or a Met fan, you know this, right? Yankees 20-31 since then. The Mets 18-31. Just incredible. Yankees had a 7-game lead in the division. Now they're barely clinging to the final wild card. For the Mets, they went from the best record in baseball to now fighting for that last wild card spot in the National League. So what the heck is going on? I think both teams obviously have been brutal. They're going through a terrible stretch. But to me, one slump is far more alarming than the other because not all slumps are the same. You have to take a look at all the different factors. And to me, what the Yankees are going through right now is far worse than where the Mets find themselves. The Mets are still okay. It's not great, but it's far better than the Yankees. Now, both teams do have some of the same issues. People have brought it up, right, about the rotation, not getting length from the starters. It forces the bullpen in every single game, wears it down. But, the big difference there is the Yankees have invested in their starting rotation. They sink resources into the starters. Max Fried, Carlos Rodon are getting paid to be aces. Now, Fried certainly was in the first half. Rodon was good in the first half. But now neither guy has been good. Fried was not good yesterday, and they're not giving the Yankees the length they're paying for. Now, the Mets, on the other hand, they have not invested in the rotation, but yet I still think they're in a better spot if Kodai Senga is healthy, if Sean Manaea is going to recover from his injury. Plus, the Mets have some young arms that have not been called up yet that could be the solution, either in the rotation or in the bullpen. We saw that in the past. Corbin Burns, the first year he came up with the Brewers, with David Stearns, with Milwaukee, he was pitching out of the bullpen, I think, in 2018. So that is a major factor for the Mets that I think is good in their favor in terms of solving the pitching issue. But of course, pitching is not the only issue. The offense for both teams has been alarming. Now, you might say the Yankees, they've scored more runs than anyone this season. Yeah, not lately, not since the All-Star break, not since the trade deadline. And as I said about the trade deadline in that episode that we broke all that down, for the Yankees, if Aaron Judge does not return to be Aaron Judge, you could pick up 1,000 relievers. It's not going to matter. Now, it's a small sample size, but in the sample size we have to go on with him being back from this injury, he's hitting 175 with a slugging of 300. No other stats needed. No other explanation needed. If Aaron Judge does not get back to being Aaron Judge, there is no plan B for the Yankees. They are absolutely cooked. Now, that's not to say there's not people to blame. Aaron Boone's decision to bring Devin Williams into a tie game on Friday night against the Astros is beyond ridiculous. When it was the 10th inning and you bring him in, everyone knew, apparently outside of Aaron Boone, that there would not be an 11th inning. So that's why, to me, the Yankees, there is no rock bottom. Because every time you think, well, it can't get any worse than this, they find a new way to lose a game. Base running, fielding, not knowing how many outs there are, pitching changes that make no sense. You never know what's coming with the Yankees. Nothing is off the table. With the Mets, this does feel like rock bottom. They're a streaky team for better or worse, and right now, they're in a bad streak, absolutely. But they were a gutty team last year that fought its way back. I still think that that's there. It's essentially the same team. Now, part of this is for the Mets, their offense cannot possibly be worse. And that's what it's been. It's been basically the worst offense in baseball. It might not ever be as good as all the names that they have collected, the Fab Fours they call them. Since June 13th, their offense is 30th in runs per game. That can't continue. And for all the talk and all the focus on Juan Soto or Pete Alonso even, the guy they need right now is Francisco Lindor. He's the guy who's slumped. In the last month, he's hitting 169 with a slugging of under 300. He's not done anything since May. That's not acceptable. He's the engine that makes the Mets offense go. And he's one of the highest paid players in the sport. If you're looking for what's different from last year to this year, that's it. This is Lindor's 5th season here as a Met. He's had one excellent season last year, 2 very good ones, and then one bad one the first year, and then this year. This is $37 million, so he has got to get going. Another thing for why the Yankees are in a worse position is who they're fighting for a playoff spot. You know, for all the jokes about the Yankees not being able to beat out the Guardians' payroll, they got 2 guys betting on their performance that are suspended from base. The Guardians are a well-run team. They make the playoffs fairly regularly. They know what they're doing, and we know that they're a well-run team. The Mets are being chased now by the Reds. The Reds have not made the playoffs since 2013. They've not won a playoff game since 2012 and have not won a playoff series since 1995. There's no way in God's green earth that the Mets can lose a playoff spot to the Reds while still having the highest payroll in the sport. You know, the Mets have had some embarrassing collapses, losing out to the Reds and missing the playoffs while after signing the highest paid player in the sport and having the highest payroll in the sport a year after making the NLCS, that would be an all-timer. I don't think that that's going to happen. The series to the Brewers was a debacle. It was an all-time low, but I think that that's what it is. It is rock bottom. The Mets need to get going, and I think they will. With the Yankees, I'm not nearly as confident. All right, we're joined now by, of course, you see the face, you know the face. It is, of course, Michael Kay, Yankee broadcaster, host of the Michael Kay Show. Michael, thank you for giving us a couple of minutes today. How's everything going?
Everything's going great. How about you, Gordon?
Well, look, I wish the Yankees were playing better. I'm sure you wish, as a broadcaster, the Yankees were playing better. Before we get into all the nastiness of that, the first question I wanted to ask you when we were thinking about doing this was about Aaron Judge and just how, you know, like we're getting to see in real time one of the all-time Yankee greats. And this is not an organization that lacks for greats. You've been broadcasting the Yankees since the early 90s, right? As a radio broadcaster, would you say he's the best player overall from, soup to nuts that you have broadcast in that time?
With the Yankees, it's always hard to make that declaration because there have been so many great players. So if you look at Mariano Rivera as an individual entity, he's not a hitter, not a fielder, but at what he did, he's probably just as good as what Judge is. So I don't know if he's better than that. And then for the sum of the parts, Derek Jeter was just a terrific player. He was great at nothing, but when you put them all together, he was a great player. Talent-wise, Judge is probably better when you take away the little individual parts because he's a better power hitter. He hits right now for better average than Derek. But I'd say that those three are certainly in the conversation for the best that I've seen. And I started in '92. Yeah,
so I mean, you've gotten your witness of a lot of great players. As a talk show host, I'm sure you hear all the time, if George were still alive, As someone who covered George, I feel like a lot of people that say if George was still alive, we're not alive when George was actually running things. Can you describe what it was like to cover him, especially as someone breaking in at that time at the height of his powers?
Well, I was a newspaper writer, so it was a completely different vibe than when I was a broadcaster. So as a newspaper writer, you were just not on the Yankee beat. You were on the George Steinbrenner beat. And when I started in newspapers, it's going to age me right now, there were no cell phones. So when you were on the road with the team, you could not leave the room. You had to put in a call every day at like 6 o'clock in the morning to his Tampa office and say, Michael Kay looking to talk to George Steinbrenner. And he had an innate ability to make you stay in that room all day. And then he somehow knew, Gordon, when you were leaving the room because you had to get to the ballpark. So you'd leave the room at about 3 o'clock, and then you'd come back after the game, and you'd see that dreaded red light in the hotel room phone. Younger listeners right now have no idea what I'm talking about. And you would check with the front desk, and they go, George Steinbrenner called the 301. And you just wanted to pound your head against the mirror in the room. And that's what it was like. It was, people romanticize it a little bit, but it was manic. It was manic. It worked for a while, and people forget it didn't work for a while. And then he had that second act when he came back from the suspension where he let everybody do their thing, and Joe Torre was the stabilizing force. So I think the second act is fresh in people's minds. And, I think when they say, what would George do? What George would do is he would go out and get the best players. But what's odd is people want to villainize Hal. Hal spends as much money as any team. He's up there with the Dodgers and the Mets. And it's just a different world because you can't only get your money from the Yankees. You can get your money from everywhere. And also there's penalties about spending money, which George Steinbrenner never had to deal with, and Hal does. So listen, what would George Steinbrenner do? Yeah, he would have fired Joe Girardi after he didn't make the playoffs in 2008 if he was running things then. He probably would have fired Aaron Boone a couple of times already. But is that a good thing? You fired Joe Girardi after 2008. Does the 2009 championship happen? So the Yankees have been really a stable organization for a long time. 12 years of Torre, 10 years of Girardi, 8 years of Boone. They just don't fire managers like they used to.
Yeah, I mean, when I was growing up as a kid watching the Yankees, I came right after the 70s championships, and then, 81, they lose the World Series. And people think I'm crazy. Every year it was a manager being fired, a hitting coach being fired, a GM. Sometimes multiple. It felt like multiple positions were getting changed. Is there anyone in sports currently who can compare to what George was like?
I would say Jerry Jones probably can. And Jerry Jones probably even more so because he truly does run that team. He's the general manager of the team. Now, George might have been the de facto general manager where he can yay or nay everything. But the bottom line is Jerry Jones is close. I don't think Steve Cohen is close. Because I don't think Steve Cohen is like, win or die sort of guy. George Steinbrenner really did want to win. He was obsessed with it. And he said it was second only to breathing, and it was a close second. So I'd say Jerry Jones is probably the closest. Do you think that's accurate?
I don't know. I mean, he's another guy who's not changing coaches. Like the word used, manic, I think, is a really good descriptive term because it just felt like constant change. And now it feels like the organization is like the opposite side of that coin.
Right.
Where it's almost like they have PTSD from those years and they want to do everything the opposite. And sometimes that's the right approach, right? George would trade away young players before they, became stars. Doug Drabeck or Jay Buhner. Yankees don't trade away their stars before they develop. So there's good sides to that and bad sides to that. But I do think that you said romanticize. People romanticize the George years because there were championships, but they kind of missed that middle section where when he was suspended, Yankee Stadium cheered. Right. So,
yeah. I was there that night, and it was kind of odd. And maybe with new technology, which we're both of us are learning every single day. Sometimes you have to unplug things to make it work. So maybe he needed a reset as well. And that, that 2 years that he was forced to step back. G. Michael didn't trade Bernie Williams. He didn't trade all those young players. He made the draft picks. He was judicious with everything. And then when George came back, that's when George really helped because then he was able to supplement things. He kept that team together. That team had so many great stars and superstars that it's now in Monument Park. It's hard to keep a team like that together. But he invested in that team to keep it together. And that's when that's the romantic version. That's the part where it really did work. Yeah.
All right. We put it off long enough. What the hell is going on with the Yankees this year, Michael?
It's funny. We're taping this right before I do my show. And I'm going to open my show and go, I find it so heartwarming that people come to me for answers for this, and I don't have one. I mean, this is really awful. I mean, they're playing really bad baseball for a third of the season. So they played a really good brand of baseball for a third of the season. So what are they? We've had these like down patches we've seen from the Yankees for 2 or 3 years, and they always pull out of it. And I look at it now. I have the schedule in front of me. Starting tonight, it's go time. I mean, you used to be really great Minnesota Twins teams, like you owned them. You got to take all three of these games today, and then after Minnesota, you go to the White Sox. 4 games in Chicago. You got to beat up on that team, and then you finish that. You got no, I'm way ahead of myself. Minnesota, St. Louis, and then Tampa Bay. That's right before things get tough again, because then you got Boston for 4 games. So I think the schedule is easy enough for them to make a run. But somebody I was talking to yesterday gave me a great line. He says, you keep saying that there are teams that the Yankees should beat on that schedule, and there are. The last 2 weeks of the schedule are easy teams. He said, those teams are looking at the Yankees that way right now. So the Yankees have not been able to beat anybody consistently. And the thing that's really puzzling, Gordon, is that every time they have that victory that you think is the seminal victory, like the last one of the road trip where they beat the Rangers and Bednar got 5 outs, you go, okay, that's going to turn around. Then they lay an egg on Friday. Then they have that big Trent Grisham home run on Saturday. You go, okay, that's it. And then they were completely listless on Sunday. So I can't figure them out. And I will tell you this. If Max Fried continues to pitch this way, they have no chance anyway. They need length out of him. They need length out of Rodon, because you cannot, I think we're seeing it across town with the Mets too, you cannot continue to put your bullpen in a position of having to get 12 to 15 outs every single day. It's not sustainable. No matter how deep your bullpen is, it's not sustainable.
As we're sitting here on August 11th taping this, do you think they make the playoffs?
I think they do, because I don't think Cleveland is good enough, especially with the loss of Clase and the loss of Ortiz. So that they're a confusing team, but they're a gritty team too. I just don't think there's enough behind them that can catch them. Texas probably has it in them, but they haven't been able to get off on a run too. That last game in Texas, Gordon, was really important, because that's the tiebreaker. If they both finish like with 85 wins, the same record, then the Yankees get the wild card. But it's inconceivable to me that we're talking about the Yankees. Are they going to make the playoffs? They have a $320 million payroll. How is that possible that they're even struggling to make the playoffs? They should be running away at the division.
Yeah, and outside of Cole, I mean, they've been relatively healthy. Sometimes you can have just a bad year. Judge goes down in 2023 with the Dodger thing, and it can happen. But that really hasn't been the case this year, and it feels like there's just so many areas. There's no one area where you can say, oh, we can rely on that.
No, the only other injury is the one to Heel. So you lost him for 4 months. But, Warren has stepped up and done a pretty good job. Losing Clark Schmidt does not help. So that was a late one. And they were struggling even before he went down. So I think that the replacements they had, the plan B for when they lost Soto, I think Bellinger is a terrific player. I mean, I love watching him play. He's a baseball player. Goldschmidt's had a little bit of a downturn after a hot start, but you look at his OPS plus, Gordon, I think it's like 112. So that means he's 12% better than the average first baseman, and they got nothing out of first base the last couple of years. Rizzo just couldn't do it. He got hurt all the time. So I think everybody's having an okay year. If you look at players that you're a little disappointed in, Volpe, Wells, they have not really stepped up. The bullpen, I think, has been worn out. I think that Catcher made all the right moves, bringing those players in to bolster a bad part of the team, but it's hard to figure out. It's like if they can make a mistake, they'll make a mistake to lose a game.
And it feels like they make mistakes. Like there's no rock bottom, because it feels like that the mistake could be anything, right? It could be on the base pass. It could be a fielding mistake, forgetting how many outs there are. It just feels like there's no rock bottom, because you never know what's coming next.
Yeah, I keep saying rock bottom, and it's silly because they find a lower area to dig to. So it's weird. They've lost some heartbreaking kick in the stomach games. A couple of them in Miami. The Marlins are kind of a gutty team, and they don't give up. But you can't be swept by the Marlins in Miami. You just can't. And I keep saying stuff like that, and they just do. They lose these games. They lose these series that they shouldn't. Again, starting tonight with the Minnesota series, it's going to tell you a lot. If they can't beat the Twins, I don't know what to tell you.
So the question then is, and I'm sure you've answered this 1,000 times, is Aaron Boone's job safe?
I always say it is, because they gave him a 2-year extension at the beginning of the year. Hal's not in the habit of paying people not to work, but it would be an embarrassment of epic proportions if they don't make the playoffs. When they didn't make the playoffs in what was it in 2023?
Yeah, 2 years ago.
They were just ravaged by injuries, so you could see why it would happen. This, as you said, there've been injuries, but everybody has injuries. The Blue Jays have had injuries, and the Red Sox have been injuries, and they're in front of them. So I would say the possibility exists, but it's unlikely. And like I tell everybody, and people get furious at me on social media and also on the radio show, you're going to just get Aaron Boone 2.0. You're not going to get Earl Weaver. You're not going to get Billy Martin. You're not going to get Lou Piniella. You're not going to get that guy. As long as Brian Cashman is running the organization, it is a collaborative effort. It is front office and manager working together. And they are in concert all the time. I'm not saying that Boone's a puppet because he agrees with everything they do. That's one of the reasons he got hired. During that meeting, what would be the lineup with these numbers available that you would put out? And he had the exact lineup that they put out. So it's like think. And they're not going to bring in somebody who's going to push back. Girardi pushed back. He was let go. He also criticized the players. He was let go. Joe Torre wanted no part of it. We had him in the booth during Old Timers Day. He said, I believe in analytics, but I think the manager has to manage by the gut as well. And I remember we had Brian Cashman on the show a couple of years ago, and I said, what would happen if the manager managed by the gut? Is he allowed? He goes, yeah, he's allowed. And then he paused. He goes, he better be right. Because then they'll ask the question, why'd you go against the numbers? So, and Joe Torre once gave me a great line, which I always repeat, Gordon, about numbers. He said, numbers are valuable. He said, but if there's a number that tells me, okay, I've got to take David Cone out at this spot because the guy I'm going to bring in the bullpen is better against this lane of people. He goes, okay, I could buy that. He said, but what the numbers don't tell me is that David Cone would actually kill a small farm animal to get this next out. I don't know if that guy coming in from the bullpen is like that. So he said that's where the numbers just miss out a little bit.
So it's not just the Yankees that have changed the approach to what the manager's job is. I mean, they get criticized the most with Boone and all that type of stuff. You're around baseball. What made that change?
I just think that, every team has a mental skills coach, and you got to make the players feel comfortable. They don't want to feel uncomfortable. And, people, because we're in New York, they look at the Yankees, but I'm sure the Mets have a lot of this as well.
Oh, sure.
That's one of the reasons Bill Belichick doesn't have a job in the NFL. You could do that with college kids. You can't be a taskmaster that much, when it comes to other sports. I think in basketball as well. I mean, who got Tom Thibodeau fired? The players did. The players hold all the cards. So the pendulum goes back and forth. And right now, it's totally in the area of the players. I can't pinpoint when, but players are spoiled now. Kids are spoiled. So if a kid's the best 14-year-old playing in their town, they're probably given free pizza and ice cream wherever they go. Yeah. They're catered to. Their parents cater to them. Their coach caters to them. And I think that it's a societal issue if we really, really want to get deep. So, the best hope that the pendulum swings the other way, Gordon, is if the Brewers win the World Series, because Pat Murphy is none of that. He's 66 years old. He criticizes his players. He gets in their face. And you know what? They play great. They play hard for him. So maybe there is hope because sports is a copycat world. If Pat Murphy works, then somebody's going to look for their Pat Murphy.
If we were doing a word cloud of all the different names that you have mentioned during your radio show, no name would be more prominent in that word cloud than Brian Cashman. The amount of criticism, the amount of focus on him. He's been here for, I think it's 25 years now, whatever it is, which is, as a kid growing up, a Yankee general manager lasting 25 years would have seemed impossible. Does Brian Cashman have a job for life with the Yankees?
Well, it's actually more than 25 because,
okay.
I've been broadcasting now for 34. So he was around the Yankees even before that. So it's probably 35 years. He is considered a member of the family. So, I mean, the only way job for life, I don't know. I think that if he and Hal came to an agreement, maybe it's time to move on or something like that. It would never be you're fired, get out of here, pack your stuff. And again, in answer to that Boone question, it would just be somebody that's working under him that would take over. It's not like Hal Steinbrenner would have, bring in A.J. Preller or something like that. Hal Steinbrenner likes to be comfortable. He likes familiarity. He wants to know who he's working with. I mean, his nephew, Steven Swindle, is all on board with the Brian Cashman stuff in terms of like analytics and stuff like that. And he'd probably be next in line to take over for Hal when Hal wants to step down. So I think the organization is firmly in the camp of, numbers are the way to go. And in judging Brian Cashman, Gordon, it's hard. And I think the Yankees are their own worst enemy with this. It goes back to George, where he started, World Series or bust. Mm-hmm. And that was picked up by Jeter, and it's now since been picked up by Judge. So your most visible players are saying that. So the fans, I don't blame the fans. They have it in their mind. If we don't win a World Series, it's a failure. So I don't look at last year as a failure. I mean, it's a disappointment they didn't win the World Series. They got to the World Series. That's not easy to do. You're one of the last two teams standing. And when I bring that up to people on the radio show, they go, oh, but it was a weak American League. Okay, but they were the best team in the American League. They won their 41st pennant. So Brian Cashman, the first year I started broadcasting was 92. That's the last losing season they had. So if you're an owner of a team and your team every single year competes for a playoff spot and is built to win a World Series, is the guy doing a bad job? I know you could say, well, they haven't won since 2009. True. But if you take away that World Series or bust mentality every single year, and there are teams out there with high payrolls. Remember when Buck Showalter last year with the Mets, they had the highest payroll in baseball. They didn't make the playoffs. That doesn't happen with the Yankees all that often. So it's how you judge whether he's doing a good job or not. Maybe Hal's looking at it and go, every year we compete. Every year we don't, fall all over ourselves. Every year we get 40,000 people a game. So the fans are interested. Again, I'm not in Hal Steinbrenner's mind, Gordon, so I don't know how he views failure or success.
Yeah, well, we hear from, obviously, Boone every single day. We hear from Cashman more than most general managers in this town.
Yeah.
Not that you're on a call every day kind of basis with Hal Steinbrenner, but at least you have had contact. What's a misconception that people have about Hal?
The one that, I mean, I'm not even part of his family, but when people go, A, he's cheap, and B, he doesn't care. I don't get that thinking. He's not his father. So his father set this template. Okay, this is the kind of guy who wants to win. If he didn't care about winning, Gordon, he could easily have a $220 million payroll, have a competitive team, have the people come into the ballpark, people watch, yes, but he goes above and beyond. You think he wants to have a payroll of $320 million? That's a misconception. This guy burns to win. He's just not the same as his father. He's not out there. He's not the front face of the organization. He's not yelling and screaming every time they fail. He's not that guy. He's just not. He's a great dude. He cares about the team. He cares about the family legacy with the team. And again, I point to the fact he does not have to have a $320 million payroll if he didn't care. He does care. And if you want to say, well, his fault is he's too loyal, go at it. If you don't think that Brian Cashman's the guy and Hal does, go at it. But the one thing you can't say is that he doesn't care. I don't buy it.
Yeah, just getting back to the question I asked you earlier about somebody who's like George now, the way he's been framed, I think Jim Dolan is very similar to the most hated guy in this town for a long time, changing people constantly. But now that they've had a little bit of success, it's amazing. Like when they were in the playoffs this year, you see him out in front of the Garden handing out basketballs. A few years ago, that would never have seemed possible. So I think that Jim Dolan might be one guy that I think that could be a little bit George Steinbrenner-esque.
You know what? And his biggest fault, he always wanted to win. He built this multi-million-dollar facility in Westchester where the teams practice and things like that. He just had bad taste when it came to people running, specifically the Knicks. And I once had lunch with him many years ago. And he said how he doesn't care what the media says. And I said, well, you're lying. You do. I mean, there's guys that you ban from the Garden that don't write nice about you. And he goes, but the fans are never going to love me. I said, no. George Steinbrenner had a second act. And I've always said this about everything in sports, Gordon. Winning is a great deodorant. People forget everything that you did wrong. If the Knicks had gotten through Indiana this year and somehow knocked off OKC, bottom line, it would have been a situation where Jim Dolan would have been lionized in this town. Same thing if the Rangers win the Stanley Cup. All of a sudden, we'll forget the things he does badly.
All right, so the Yankees are struggling. The Mets somehow have almost been as bad, and the way they're losing has somehow been even worse. What's your read on the Mets situation with what's going on there?
Um, that's hard to figure out. I mean, if you've been looking at I'm going to put this cord into my computer
Yeah,
because I
do what
think
you
the
got to do.
battery's running out. There you go. Everything that could go wrong has gone wrong. I mean, it's been great cover for the Yankees. They've both been great cover for each other because if the Mets were playing like this, losing 11 of 12 games, and just getting waxed by teams, I mean, they'd be getting vilified. But the Yankees are giving them cover and vice versa. But I look at both teams and I'm saying they're both missing a great opportunity because they could be owning the town. They could be running away with the town if they were running away with their division. With the Mets, I think the problem comes down to pitching, especially their starters. Except for Peterson, nobody goes 6 innings. And I said this earlier, and this is the thing I keep driving home. It's unsustainable the way baseball is run right now. You have put pitchers in a situation where they can't go over 100 pitches. So the way baseball is played with all the strikeouts and not much contact, you're going to get to 100 pitches sometime in the 4th or 5th inning. You're going to be taken out of the game. Your bullpen is going to get fried. It's not every once in a while you got to get 12 outs. It's every single day. And if you use a guy enough, the best people are still going to falter. And another flaw in the system that the Mets have, and the Yankees too, if you're going to get 5 innings out of your starter, all they ask from their relievers, except for David Bednar, is to get 1 inning. So that means you need 4 pitchers to pitch well. What's the likelihood of all 4 pitchers pitching well on the same day every single day? And I think baseball has to change because baseball is going to cannibalize itself by continuing to raise pitchers to all of a sudden look up at the clock and say 100 pitches, we're in trouble. So I think that's the one flaw in David Stern's system. He does not want to pay for a big-time starter, which I understand, because you're going to have to give them 8 or 9 years. Do you really think the Yankees wanted to give Max Fried 8 years?
No.
Do you think that the Yankees wanted to give Garrett Cole 9 years?
Right.
But Andrew Friedman of the Dodgers once said, and it's true, if you're rational about free agents, you're always going to finish second. Always. Yeah. So sometimes you have to go out of your comfort zone. And the Garrett Coles of the world, Gordon, and until this recent slump, the Max Frieds of the world, they give you 7, maybe 8 innings. And that allows you to unplug and reset your bullpen. And David Stearns doesn't believe in that. He's trying to get a bargain in the starting rotation, looking for that Montas, bringing back Manaea. Cody Senga, he's a really good pitcher, but I think he's regressed since the hamstring injury. So if you're going to go cheap on starting pitching, it is going to bite you. And I think it's biting the Mets right now.
I think it's clear, though, after the Mets signed Soto, there was a lot of talk, the Mets are now the big brother and the Yankees are the little brother, based on how the coverage, and it's going to be skewed for you because you're the Yankee voice, but it's clear that even while both teams are going through the same thing, the bulk of the coverage is still focused on the Yankees.
It is still focused on the Yankees because when the Yankees lose, it's a bigger story. And I think Met fans sometimes have almost hypnotized themselves. Well, this is what's going to happen. I mean, this always happens. Unfortunately, it happens to them a lot. And Soto, although I think he's having a pretty good year, he's not having the year that he had last year.
No.
And so, Pete Alonso's having a terrific season, although he's, like the team over the last month, gone into a little bit of a slide. But it's not the same as having Aaron Judge behind you. Aaron Judge, you had to pitch to Soto. And Soto just had a magical year. I saw a stat yesterday. He has 28 home runs, 22 of them are solo. Yeah. And he's hitting under 200 with runners in scoring position. So it's not just him. I don't just blame him. Lindor's having a bad year. Nimmo's having a bad year. McNeil's struggling.
Nothing out of anybody else. Like
nothing.
In the black hole, third base black hole. They have a lot of spots where it's just those 4 guys, and those 4 guys have not been great.
Absolutely. And before they made the deals for Helsley and Rogers, their bullpen was stumbling as well. So I think the Mets, their only threat to me would be the Reds because Terry Francona is really good at what he does. The Giants, they traded some of their best players, so they're one of the teams chasing them. They're not going to catch them. It all comes down to winning. You got to win. You can't play under 500 ball and expect to get into the postseason. But the Mets and the Yankees both had that good run where they built up enough equity that they've been able to sustain this and still be over 500 and still be in a playoff spot. But if Cleveland had won yesterday, the Yankees would be out of a playoff spot. And the Reds are only a game and a half as we take this out of the Mets playoff spot. So it would, if the Yankees or the Mets, if either of those teams don't make the playoffs, it would be one of the biggest baseball stories around here in decades.
All right, you used to do on your center stage show your hit and run segment. So, is center stage ever coming back? Is that done now?
I think COVID did a lot of damage. So
Yeah.
it
Okay.
has not been officially canceled, but I
Mhm.
have not done one in like 4 years. So maybe I should take the hint.
I guess so. All right, I want to do a couple of hit and run with you. First Yankee game.
In 1972, so I was 11 years old. No, 1971. I was 10 years old against the Washington Senators, and it was ball day, and I still have the ball.
Is that right? Wow, that's a
Yes.
pretty good. That's a pretty good memory. Have you checked on eBay to see how much that's worth?
No, I have not. But I think I want it more for me, and then give it to my son and daughter. I say my daughter to be politically correct. My daughter hates sports, so for my son,
Who is the most intimidating person you've ever interviewed?
um, Reggie was intimidating in an unpleasant way,
Hmm.
and I was just starting in the business when he was a player. So I got a pass. I remember when I was at Fordham to go to a Yankee game in '81, and it was not a pleasant experience. That was intimidating, and he didn't make it any easier.
Interesting. All right. Taking the Yankees out of it, best uniform in sports.
Dodgers.
Really?
I love the Dodger uniform. The
Best.
crisp white.
Yeah.
Yeah,
A lot of good ones. I like the
yeah.
Cardinals as well. I think that's a really sharp one.
That's in there too.
Um, best non Yankee athlete that you wish you had the chance to cover on an everyday basis.
Probably. Oh, these are good. Maybe healthy Mike Trout.
Okay. Has there ever been a call of another broadcaster that you wish you got the chance to make?
I want to answering a question like this makes me seem like such a glutton because how awesome has it been for me
No,
to
you've
call
had a
Yankee
thousand,
games?
right? And people will be hearing those for forever.
The one that I've talked to him personally about it. The home run in the Texas, I forget right now who they played, but Texas Rangers in the World Series that brought them to a game 7, the home
Mhm.
run. And when Joe Buck said, "We'll see you tomorrow night," and channeled his dad, just
Yeah.
even talking about it now, I get goosebumps. That's like just such an unbelievable call.
What's the biggest misconception people have or fans have about broadcasters?
Um, wow, they have a lot of them. I guess I can only talk about me. What's difficult about this job, Gordon, and maybe it's a misconception, is that every ear hears you differently. So we work together. I got Yankee boy for years, but then there's a segment of the Yankee fan base who thinks that I'm too negative. So how could you be a Yankee boy and be too negative? I think the biggest misconception, though, is that national broadcasters care who wins. Like they don't. They really don't. I mean, the hatred that Joe Buck got when he was doing the World Series, and he would joke with me, when the Yankees played the Phillies in 2009. When you go to Phillies, Philadelphia fans would say you want the Yankees to win, and when you go to Yankee Stadium, you want the Phillies to win. So I mean, that made him think maybe I'm doing a good job. So I think the biggest misconception is that national broadcasters root.
Favorite ballpark outside of Yankee Stadium to call a game from?
Although it's not the greatest broadcast booth because it's so high, I like the vibe of Fenway Park a lot. It's pretty awesome. And in terms of other ones that I love being at Wrigley Field. Although the broadcast booth is awful and it's up in the sky, you're closer to God than you are to the field. Seattle is terrific. Baltimore's terrific, and Cleveland is terrific. Those are all really great ballparks.
Favorite road city? Chicago? Is it still?
Chicago's changed, unfortunately, but it's still my favorite city. It used to be a great walking town, but since all the unrest, it's probably not as safe. But walk down the Magnificent Mile with all those great stores and the views and the buildings. And I've always said it this way, Gordon. I love being from New York. I love being born from the Bronx, born in the Bronx. But if I had another life to live, I would live it in Chicago.
What's the most New York thing about you?
I have a chip on my shoulder. I always think somebody's out to get me. I'm always looking over my shoulder, and I'm never ever satisfied. I should be, and I'm miserable half the time.
You've said this before, but do you have a pinch me moment in broadcasting or in your career?
The pinch me moment came when I got the gig because I wanted to be the Yankee announcer since I was 9. So the first game I ever did in the regular season with John Sterling was opening day in '92, and it was the Red Sox, and it's at Yankee Stadium, and I'm looking out of the booth and I'm going, I can't believe it. I can't believe that this dream came true. So I know this sounds corny, but when I walk into the booth tonight, I always take it in because I never know if it's my last day in there. There's that looking over your shoulder thing. So I just want to appreciate it. And the only thing that's bad about my job, especially since I've had children, is the travel.
Yeah.
But it's somewhat lessened. In radio you did every single game. TV they do give you series off. But that was the pinch me moment. And the specific part of the pinch me moment was there's about 15 seconds to air. And John Sterling goes, as you embark on this career, I've got 2 bits of advice for you. I said, oh, great. He's going to tell me, talk from your sternum, whatever. Mm-hmm. He goes, never ask me my age on the air. And sometimes I talk to myself. Don't be alarmed. And you know what? They were very valuable. So I never he would talk to himself constantly. Like even when I was doing play-by-play, he'd hit the cough button and he'd have a conversation with somebody else that wasn't there. So if he had not warned me of that, it would have been a little disconcerting.
Yeah, yeah. Is there a sporting event that you have not covered that's on your bucket list, either to go to experience, or to broadcast? Two
of them. I don't know if I'll be able to pull it off because they're always during baseball season. I don't know. I don't want to cover them. I just want to go. Wimbledon. Wimbledon seems like a dream to me, and that's food I like. Strawberries and cream. I could deal with that. And
really,
I love strawberries and cream.
Okay.
And the Kentucky Derby.
Okay.
Because my dad used to love horses, and I kind of love horse racing as well. Not an expert at it by any stretch, but I love watching horses run. And the Derby is the thing. I've been to the Belmont, but I've never been to the Kentucky Derby. Do you have a TV show that's your guilty pleasure? I don't know. Friends, is that guilty? I've watched every episode of Friends over 30 times. It's something that Aaron Boone and I have in common. Is that right? I would not strike Boone as a Friends guy. When after every game on the road, I think what is it? One of the cable channels. I forget which one. You just find it, but I think it's E. They have like 10 episodes in a row of Friends, and he goes home and he goes back to the hotel room and watches it, and it calms him down. And I just love it. I love every character. And people, the next question, people are, well, what character would you be? I'd probably be Chandler. Okay. Yeah. Then the news came out, I think it was last week, about Howard Stern. You have mentioned your admiration for Howard Stern. What do you think about that news that he might not be back on Sirius, and his broadcasting career could at least possibly, he'll probably go someplace else, but could possibly be over? What were your thoughts when you first saw that? I was stunned. I thought that he would always call a shot, and maybe he is. Maybe Sirius is offering him less money than he made, and he's saying, "No, I don't want to do it for that." So it sounds like they would take him back at the right price, and I'm sure he has options. He could get a streaming show. He could go on TV and do an interview show because he's such a great interviewer. The thing that I don't like about it is that in the political climate we're in now, everybody from one side is jumping on the fact, because he hates Trump, and he was pro-Biden and pro-Harris, and he's getting what he deserves. And I think you're seeing that with Colbert as well. I think it comes down to money. Yeah, I really do. So I think the smartest thing that Jay Leno has said about all of this is, when you're one way or the other, you're alienating half the country. He said that's why he didn't do much political humor. And if you listen to my show, I mean, people try to surmise what side I'm on. I don't think people should know who I vote for. People should know which way I lean. And we got into that a lot, Gordon, when I did the afternoon show with Peter and Don, especially during COVID. And it turned a lot of people off. Peter is very polarizing because Peter doesn't hide what side that he's on. Right. And that really annoyed half of our audience, especially a sports audience. Many sports fans are conservative. And if you lean the other way, you're going to lose some people. And if you look at the show that we went up against, they kind of they lean the other way. So I think that benefited them. So yeah, I never want to give my take on that. I don't think people care. They shouldn't care. They wouldn't vote if I tell them to vote a certain way.
They do care. They want to know, but they don't. They're not going to follow or oppose. Based on that. But it is weird.
Well, they care. They care because they want to jump me if they're not on the side that I'm on. So I really truly am. I don't lean one way or the other in terms of a party. I just take every individual candidate and I judge it that way.
Supposed to be the way it goes, right?
Yeah.
Well, Michael, thank you so much for this. Thank you for the time. Have a great, broadcast, and hopefully the Yankees are back in the playoffs and things start to pick up here before too long. I know as a Yankee boy, as they'll always call you, whether you want it or not, I know that broadcasting a winning team is far better than what's been going on here recently.
I always say that. People go, "Do you root?" And I go, "I really don't root, but I root for yes." And it's better for yes if the Yankees win. The ratings are better and things like that, and people are happier and all of that. So I root for the company I work for, and it works for the Yes Network if the Yankees are competitive. And I thank you for having me on, and good luck with the podcast.
Thanks, Michael.
Remember college? Well, now, college is over, and here comes your student loan debt. Is your private student loan debt keeping you up at night? You really need to talk to YRefi. YRefi refinances distressed or defaulted private student loans that others won't touch. They can save you thousands of dollars and get you a custom payment that you can afford. And they don't care what your credit score is. Don't let private student loan debt ruin your life. Call YRefi today.
All right, that's going to do it for another episode of Gordon Damer on Sports. If you've listened this far, if you've watched this far, please hit subscribe, like the episode, rate the episode, share it with a friend. It really does help us out. And we will be back later this week with a new episode, only right here on Gordon Damer on Sports.